Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. There really isn't much going on news-wise right now, is there? No hard data on what's happening with Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte and Jarrell Miller. Those are the five guys, the five names that keep popping up time and time again. I'm sure you've been clicking into website links or video links on the promise of some news, something that will actually move a story on, and then being disappointed because there's not a lot going on right now. We're in a bit of a weird period where we're waiting for something to happen, but in the interim, media, YouTubers, others putting out content, and yeah, it promises much but delivers little because there isn't anything really to announce. So we're seeing some of these little bits and pieces, one detail, and then you get the rest as context around what's happening or opinion on what may happen. So I've been especially the last few days, I've been like, well, there's not really much going on. I haven't wanted to do too many videos on it because nothing is really new. We know that Dillian Whyte wants more against Anthony Joshua. We know Anthony Joshua's put out offers to Whyte, Wilder and Fury. We know Jarrell Miller is hanging in the background wanting a fight with Joshua if Joshua's Wembley date falls over. And much of the associated stuff with that, the dates and all that sort of stuff, we broadly knew all that anyway. Maybe not a specific date, but we knew the different months that the fights were likely to happen. But every new detail, even if there is no new details, is being put out, rinsed and repeated, and we're being told that this is something new and this is something we should watch and listen to. So I'm looking at this going, where's the actual news in all this? Where's the so-called breaking news? When actually it might be one detail and we already knew that detail anyway. But I do want to, because there's been so much happening, because I want to stay on top of it, I'm going to go through a couple of bits and pieces really quickly, couple of quick thoughts. I'm not going to dwell on anything for too long because we've already kind of heard it before, but there are a number of things that have been happening I wanted to wade in on. So I think about 6 or 7 articles that I'll quickly get to. This first one here. Anthony Joshua next fight, British boxer could face Gerald Miller in New York in June and not Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury. And that's not astounding in itself, but what we do have is Eddie Hearn again saying there's radio silence from Wilder, Fury, and we're talking to Dillian Whyte. We're talking. Part of me would love to see Joshua come to the States. He's creeping into the top 5 right now. That's Gerald Miller. He's making some noise in America. To be a global star at some point, you have to fight in America, and Joshua fill up Madison Square Garden with 22,000 people. That's a real statement of intent for a world heavyweight champion, for a Brit especially. We'll see what happens. I think you'll get a decision next week, and next week is, what is it? When was this article? It was a couple of days ago, so that is this week sometime apparently. So what is it now? It's Wednesday in New Zealand, Tuesday in the Northern Hemisphere. Coming into Wednesday when this video was published. So, all of this are about Jarrell Miller. I still don't think it's, I think much of this is some of Eddie Hearn's rearguard action to build Jarrell Miller's profile. He is a backup option, he is an option, but it's also a negotiating chip, because if Dillian Whyte is asking for too much, or any of the others, they can always say, well, we're talking to this other guy over here. And Wilder and Fury, there's radio silence from them because they've stated they want to have a rematch. They have other options. The best thing for them that came out of the draw was that there was fan demand for a rematch. If that had gone badly for one of them, there would have been much more pressure on either to accept a fight with Anthony Joshua. Now we've got Joshua chasing that fight, but these other guys saying they don't want it because he's not offering them enough. And they don't have to take the fight because they can fight each other and gain more commercial traction for negotiations for next time. So they don't have to, and I see all these people saying to me in comments, I need to use my platform here on YouTube to demand that fight and pressure them into it. But I think people forget, these videos are not going to have one jot of difference on what ends up happening with all these guys fighting each other. It's a reality. Just because I would like to see an undisputed fight does not mean that it's going to happen. We've been wanting an undisputed fight for the best part of a year or 18 months now, since it's been available. But, the rematch is there for Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, and I don't mind the rematch. And if Joshua is not going to pay Wilder or Fury the money that they want, we won't see the fight. It's as simple as that. And people will say they're being greedy, but it's prize fighting. Of course they can, and they have some leverage here because Wilder, he's got the belt that Joshua wants. So we're always likely to have a situation where Joshua has to overpay just to get that fight. And we're not going to be able to get away from that. And just getting back to the story here, so don't be surprised to see Joshua in June against Big Baby Miller in this building. And this headline's been everywhere in the last few days, but that's not new as well. I mean, Hearn has been saying that for some time now. He's been making those hints that that could happen. I still think it's not the most likely option, just because abandoning the only date that they have at Wembley in 2019 and all the money and associated planning logistics that would have gone into it already, I just don't see it. But some of what is also going on, before I get onto some of this other stuff, is it's about positioning. Because you might recall, Eddie Hearn, prior to December 2018, said needed to lock Joshua's opponent up for April 2019 before December. And, he needed to get talks underway with Wilder. And when Wilder and his team didn't want to have a bar of it, the goalpost started shifting. And we're almost now into February. So there were these artificial deadlines that were put in place. And even Barry Hearn had been saying we need to, announce something just because we've got an event and we have to be able to promote the event and do all the things that we need to do to sell the venue at Wembley. So I guess, you could maybe look at that and go, with such, all the time dragging on and we're almost into February, well, maybe it will get cancelled. But I still think they'll keep that date. But, is it going to be Dillian Whyte? Who knows? But moving on now. Eddie Hearn urges Dillian Whyte to take Anthony Joshua fight, warns Alexander Usyk could take WBO mandatory position. And in itself, this has been floating around, this sort of thing, for a few months now. We know that Alexander Usyk is the WBO super champion. He could move up and demand a title shot right now if he wanted to. So that in itself is not new, but Eddie Hearn sort of using that as potential leverage for Dillian Whyte. Well, I guess that is new. But here it is. The promoter who guides both heavyweights' careers is overseeing negotiations, yada, yada, yada. He wants a shot at the world heavyweight title. We've delivered that. He doesn't feel the package is right at the moment. Now, I think it is a good offer. I think also it's a shot at the world heavyweight title. He's built himself to number one in the division. He's not a mandatory challenger. AJ's giving him a shot at the title for multi-millions of pounds. There's probably still some negotiations to do, but it also comes down to how much value you put on a shot at the heavyweight title. And I guess that's the thing, it is a voluntary, and if Dillian Whyte really wants a shot at a heavyweight title, it is there for him. They've increased the offer, we don't know what it is. The first offer was apparently not a great offer. Whyte was saying he would get less than he got for facing Derek Chisora. In this situation, Joshua isn't bound to give him any amount of money, but if he wants to make the fight, it's got to be a reasonable deal. But what is reasonable? And that's the thing, we don't know what the pot is here, what actually could be on offer for either fighter. But if he wants a heavyweight title shot, something that he's been working towards, and he's wanted a rematch with Anthony Joshua, and this would be on the biggest stage, April at Wembley, you got to weigh these things up and go, for the sake of another $500,000, $2 million, will I ever get this opportunity again? Maybe not. Who knows? And further down here, Hearn goes, under the WBO rules, Usyk, once he steps up, if he steps up, should become that automatic mandatory. I was with the WBO last week in Puerto Rico. Dillian is number one. That won't be called for another month or so. So it's not due until September, October, but Dillian is in the running to be that mandatory. So this is the leverage, take the shot or Usyk will usurp you in the WBO. And also we know that elsewhere, Dillian Whyte is number one in the WBC, but that hasn't meant that he's getting a title shot there. So he could be, Usyk could jump the queue, potentially, for Anthony Joshua. And I think many people would want to see that fight, but is Alexander Usyk ready to step up against the unified champion later this year, should Joshua win his next fight in April or whenever his next fight is, if he goes to America? Okay, the next one. Frank Warren here waiting in. He's totally unknown. Tyson Fury promoter Frank Warren criticises Anthony Joshua for potential fight against Jarrell Miller, who means nothing in America. We'll get to the quotes here, just getting past the stuff of derisory offers to Tyson Fury and the contact. There's talk of him fighting Jarrell Miller in the States, making his American debut, but Miller means nothing in America. He's totally unknown. Anthony Joshua must be kicking himself at the moment, wondering what happened to the $80 million he turned down to fight Wilder, brackets including the rematch. And that seems to be about all from Frank Warren. He says Barry's an accountant by trade. That's how he is. As Barry said in many previous interviews, they see Anthony Joshua as a 7-year situation. He don't care whether he fights Wilder or Fury. All he cares about the fact he can sell a lot of tickets and they can make a lot of money from it. That's fair enough if that's the road they want to go down, but I don't think the public are standing for that anymore. And I think there's something in that, they're running a fine line if, especially because whenever Barry Hearn's interviewed, he makes no secret it's all about money. It's not about the fights. So they've got to run a fine line between, because you can only finesse some of these things so far. You might be able to get away with the Jarrell Miller fight next because you can say, well, Wilder and Fury didn't want to fight. They fought each other. Dillian Whyte turned the shot down. The next cab off the rank was Jarrell Miller. Although, Kubrat Pulev, he potentially is in the conversation. But if it becomes about money and people are getting peeved off that the fights aren't getting made because of money, there will be blowback. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that, fan-driven blowback online in comment sections, Facebook, boxing pages, different forums on the internet where people are saying, look, if you really want these big fights, do a 50-50 or something closer to it, because if you keep fighting some of these other guys you don't want and you want that legacy, well, you're going to have to give up some more money. And until now, Barry Hearn especially has been saying, no silly deals, no nothing, we're not going to be overpaying these guys. And us fans are the poorer for it. Okay, to the next one. Dillian Whyte and Dominic Breazeale open to heavyweight fight talks. And I guess this is the counter to people who say, well, where does Dillian Whyte go if he doesn't face Anthony Joshua? Because if Wilder and Fury, if they fight, they've got to deal with Dominic Breazeale. He's likely to get some sort of interim title shot. He's the WBC mandatory. He's been waiting for ages. It would, who he'd be fighting, they'd just go down the list. And if Whyte is available, he is first cab off the rank. And there is an argument to say Dillian Whyte, who's been building his own brand, his own thing, he's been on pay-per-view his past couple of fights, made millions of dollars, that if he continues down that route, especially if this was for an interim title fight against Breazeale, who he would be favoured to beat, that actually that's a legitimate route to go down, especially if he wants to continue building himself ahead of a rematch down the line with Anthony Joshua. The rematch is there at the moment, but if he's not happy with the terms, they can always address that again and come back to it. And especially if Dillian Whyte feels he can bring and build more value ahead of another fight with Joshua down the line. Right now he's building himself up, and if he's not happy with it, well, a Breazeale fight, that could happen. And just down in here in the story, Dominic Breazeale says, I hope he does make some type of deal with the PBC. And just sidebar there, Dillian Whyte's been in Las Vegas recently, telling the world, all the world to see, I'm a free agent, I'm building my value, I'm having some business meetings and all that sort of stuff. Back to the story though, if not some type of deal with the personnel that's around for me and him making a fight. People have talked about it for a while. I'm a fan-pleasing type of guy, so if that's what the fans want to see, I'm all for it. And this guy's been obviously trying to get a fight with Wilder for quite a while now, sitting and waiting. Murky circumstances around how he got that mandatory shot, and now he's ranked at number 4 in the WBC, still having that title shot under his belt for whenever it happens. So Dominic Breazeale and Dillian Whyte, who is the number 1 contender in the WBC, it's a fight a lot of people would like to see. Anyway, on to the next one. Deontay Wilder on a Fury rematch. This time around, no one will be able to wake him up. So I haven't wanted to do anything on this either. It's in the similar vein because we've heard all this before. So maybe in April and May, this is in terms of the rematch, but when it happens, it's going to be amazing. It's going down. I knocked him out the first time. I will the second time. This time around, no one will be able to wake him up. It was a great fight, and I'm looking forward to the rematch. We're very close. I'm hearing a lot of rumours that Fury wants a few warm-ups, but if he wants to fight me, I'm here. If he don't, then be gone. We got to move on. As of now, all I hear is Fury wants the rematch, and he's in the gym. And I guess, again, that's the equation, what we've talked about from the first fight. Deontay Wilder probably has to knock Tyson Fury out. Fury probably has to win on points. Even then, he might get robbed. Who knows? On to the next thing. Tyson Fury wants to fight in New Zealand during Global Roadshow. So this is on stuff.co.nz. NZ. It's from originally the Sunday Times. His first goal was to beat Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua and become undisputed world champion, and then have 12 fights in 12 months around the world. 12 countries, 12 fights: Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Nigeria, Spain. Boom. The Tyson Fury Roadshow. Let's do something that's never been done before. Let's leave a legacy. I'm serious. It's my dream. I've done everything else. I may as well follow my dream. Why not? Yeah, okay, well, that's interesting. He's got obviously a hard road to hoe to get there. Got to beat Deontay Wilder, and then he's got to get into a fight with Anthony Joshua. And the way the money situation talks are going about potential 50-50 splits, we may never see an undisputed fight at this rate. But this whole thing, because I saw the story the other day and I was going to let it go, but I wanted to just wait in it for this one point. 12 fights in a year or whatever, a roadshow around the world. I don't think that would work in this day and age. 100 years ago, yes. It wasn't uncommon for, famous sports people and other sort of celebrities to do world tours and such, go around and make easy money that way, have exhibitions, other things like that. But in this day and age, the world has become a lot smaller, expectations are much, much higher. If he's having 12 fights in 12 countries, who are the opponents going to be? It would just be literally a thing for money. And I think it would be written off as a bit of a joke, as, not something that was serious, especially if the opponents were rubbish. I just don't see how Tyson Fury could do something like this global tour, 12 fights, 12 countries or whatever, and escape with credibility. People would say that he was just trading off the belt and cheapening it just for a few dollars. You could get away with that, even 30 or 40 years ago. People used to take fights in between title fights, and it was sort of showcase sort of stuff. They would sell themselves in different parts of the world or different parts of a country, say in the United States. But, these days, you wouldn't get away with that and emerge with your credibility intact. In some ways I like it, but then I just sort of think his reputation, people would smash him for doing something like this global roadshow. Okay, next thing, Hearn cautions now or never for Whyte to accept offer. Well, this, I guess, sort of follows on from the stuff from before. All of this sort of stuff, it's not really new. We've heard it all before, but it's just being said again, repeated, regurgitated. I want to make sure that deal is good enough for him to accept, but I also want him to take it because this is it. This is the World Heavyweight Championship. You've got a chance to fight for it in your own country to become king of the division. We've kind of been there, done that, heard that before. And it is there for Dillian Whyte if he wants it. So we're going to move on to the next thing. Hearn says Miller is more realistic with money. He wants for Joshua fight than Wilder, Fury or Whyte. Well, I think that's pretty obvious, isn't it? Jarrell Miller has almost zero commercial value. So if he is getting a fight in his own backyard and getting paid millions of dollars to do it, and he hasn't really had to take any hard fights recently, of course he's going to be a bit more, amiable with negotiating for that sort of fight. So if we just go down to the quote here, the one guy that looks like he's up for a fight is Jarrell Miller. He wants a lot of money, but he's more realistic than the other guys. Well, Jarrell Miller's not going to turn down multi-million dollars, which he would never get anywhere else likely in his career. So we'll have to see what happens there. But Jarrell Miller is thirsty for a payday, and he wants to sell that O to the highest bidder. That much is clear. And the last thing, don't be surprised if Joshua is on DAZN in the US in June. And this is more of the same, talking about we could go there, blah, blah, blah. And we've been hearing this for a while, and this is what I say. All these headlines, because this is a news story, it's kind of the same thing, different day, same shit. So I really hope that they do make an announcement soon. And here's the Bob Arum story that I wanted to get to quickly. So in terms of an undisputed fight or a big fight, those fights doesn't belong in the UK. They belong in the United States. I watched the Joshua fight, Parker in Cardiff. I saw the Wilder Fury fight, which was very good. These big heavyweight fights belong in the United States. If you don't do these fights in the States, you'll forego all the US pay-per-view money. And this is that same old sort of argument, get the big fights in the United States, overcharge everyone $75, $80, $90, $100, and everyone makes a lot of money, and fans will end up paying it because fans love to pay massive pay-per-view prices. Okay, that's it from me. Drop a comment loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.